Welcome back to Eskemoz, your go-to channel for all things finance. Today we bring into focus a potent question. Is money becoming worthless? Yes, it's a question that compels us to delve deep into the heart of our financial systems. So buckle up, let's explore the 15 reasons why this could be the case. Let's start with negative interest rates. Remember when you used to earn interest on your savings? A little something to help your money grow while it sat safely in the bank? Well, in our peculiar times, that fundamental principle of finance has been turned on its head. We're living in a world where some countries are actually implementing negative interest rates. You heard that right? You're essentially paying the bank to hold onto your money. This surreal phenomenon isn't just an economic theory. It's a reality that's leading to an overall devaluation of money. Think about it. When saving money actually costs you money, it distorts the entire financial ecosystem. Next in line is massive debt. And I'm not just talking about your credit card bill or student loans. We're talking about debt on a global scale, a staggering $300 trillion, which is more than 365% of global GDP. That's like owing $3 for every $1 the entire world produces in a year. This mountain of debt, much of it accumulated by governments with unsustainable spending habits, paints a very grim picture. When governments borrow recklessly and don't have viable repayment plans, it creates a domino effect. It undermines confidence in their currencies, it plunges us into a financial morass, and ultimately, it's the everyday person who pays the price as money loses its grip on its true value. Remember when money was backed by gold? Those days are long gone. We're now living in an era of fiat currency, where governments have the power to print as much money as they want without the need for equivalent reserves. While this might seem convenient on the surface, it's a slippery slope. When you detach a currency from a tangible asset like gold, you're essentially relying on trust, on the belief that this paper, these digital numbers on a screen, actually hold value. But what happens when that trust erodes? What happens when people start to question the value of the money they hold? That's when you see currencies crumble, inflation skyrocket, and the entire financial system teetering on the brink. Chapter 4. Excessive money printing. If that wasn't enough, consider this. 22% of all US dollars were printed in the last year alone. Let that sink in for a moment. Imagine a printing press churning out dollar bills non-stop, flooding the market with more and more currency. What do you think happens? Each individual dollar becomes worth less. It's basic supply and demand. And while governments often justify this excessive printing as a way to stimulate the economy, it's a dangerous game. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. You might get a temporary boost, but in the long run, you're just fueling the flames of inflation and devaluing everyone's hard-earned money. Chapter 5. Asset inflation. Moving on to asset inflation. You know, the things you work so hard to buy, a house, a car, maybe even that dream vacation home. We're seeing prices for these assets skyrocket, but here's the catch. It's not because they're inherently more valuable. It's because the money we're using to buy them is losing its purchasing power. Take real estate, for example. In many parts of the world, housing prices are reaching astronomical levels, pricing ordinary people out of the market. Your house might seem like it's worth more on paper, but in reality, it's the value of your money that's shrinking. Chapter 6. Government handouts. Now, I'm all for helping those in need, but we have to be honest about the long-term consequences of certain policies. In an attempt to avert immediate crises, like the recent pandemic, governments around the world have resorted to massive stimulus packages, essentially handing out free money. While this might seem like a lifeline in the short term, it's a dangerous game. When you inject trillions of dollars into the economy without a corresponding increase in goods and services, you're essentially fueling inflation. It's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. It might seem like a solution at first, but it ultimately makes the problem worse. Chapter 7. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the digitalization of money. Remember when you used to carry cash, when you could physically hold the money you earned? Those days are fading fast. Today, most of our transactions happen electronically. We swipe credit cards, we tap our phones, we send money across borders with a few clicks. While this digital revolution has its conveniences, it's also detached money from its tangible essence. When you can't hold it, When it's just numbers on a screen, it's easier to forget that it represents real value, real work, real resources. Chapter 8. Let's be honest, folks. Market manipulation is a reality. Whether it's hedge funds using algorithms to make a quick buck, or insiders profiting from information that's not available to the public, the sad truth is that the markets aren't always a level playing field. And when profit-making becomes the sole motive, when greed trumps ethics, it undermines the entire system. It creates artificial bubbles, it erodes trust, and it ultimately makes us question the true value of the assets we're trading. Chapter 9. The concept of universal basic income, or UBI, is gaining traction, and while I applaud the intention behind it, to provide a safety net for everyone, we have to be realistic about its financial implications. The idea of giving everyone a fixed income, regardless of whether they're working or not, might sound appealing on the surface, but it raises serious concerns about sustainability. Where will the money come from? How do we prevent inflation from spiraling out of control? These are questions that proponents of UBI need to answer before we embark on such a radical experiment. Chapter 10. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the Bitcoin in the blockchain. Cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, have exploded in popularity, and for good reason. They offer a decentralized, digital alternative to traditional fiat currencies. Major players like MicroStrategy and Tesla are moving billions of dollars into Bitcoin, seeing it as a hedge against inflation and a store of value. This shift towards digital currencies is a clear indication that people are losing faith in the traditional financial system and looking for alternatives. Chapter 11. Have you ever noticed the disconnect between the stock market and economic reality? It's like they're living in two different universes. Despite a global pandemic, supply chain disruptions, and rising inflation, the stock market continues to reach new highs. How is this possible? Well, much of it has to do with artificial stimulation. Governments are pumping trillions of dollars into the economy, and a lot of that money is finding its way into the stock market, inflating asset prices and creating a bubble that's detached from the real economy. Chapter 12. We're living in a seller's market, folks. And I'm not just talking about houses. Everything from cars to groceries to everyday essentials seems to be getting more expensive. But here's the thing. It's not always because of supply and demand. It's because we're in an environment where sellers have the upper hand. They know they can raise prices because people are desperate. And when the cost of living keeps going up, it erodes the value of our money and makes it harder for ordinary people to make ends meet. Chapter 13. Fractional-Reserve Banking. Let's talk about fractional-reserve banking, the system that underpins our entire financial system. Here's how it works. Banks are only required to hold a fraction of the money their customers deposit. The rest they can lend out, creating new money in the process. While this system has been in place for centuries, it's inherently risky. If too many people try to withdraw their money at the same time, the bank won't have enough to cover its obligations. This can lead to bank runs, financial panics, and ultimately, a loss of confidence in the entire system. Chapter 14. Myth of infinite growth. We've been sold on this idea of infinite economic growth, but it's just not sustainable. We live on a finite planet with finite resources. You can't have infinite growth in a finite system. It's like trying to fit an elephant in a Mini Cooper. Something's gotta give. And when we prioritize endless growth over environmental sustainability, social equity, and responsible consumption, we're essentially borrowing from future generations and devaluing the very foundation of our economy. Chapter 15. Interplanetary Economies. This might seem like science fiction, but with companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin making space travel more accessible, it's not as far-fetched as you might think. As we venture beyond Earth, as we establish colonies on Mars and beyond, we're going to need new forms of currencies that can operate in a decentralized interplanetary economy. Traditional fiat currencies, tied to nation-states and centralized systems, might become obsolete in this new era of space exploration. Money and its value are evolving. Willing or not, we are part of this volatile financial revolution. Eskemoz urges you to reevaluate your financial strategies, and consider diversifying into stable and futuristic assets like cryptocurrencies. Now is the time to adapt. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Eskemoz for more financial insights and strategies. The revolution is here.